Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for joining us this week on In the Paint. I know we've been a little absent. We've had some things going on, but yeah, we're on our season finale. As you know, I'm your host, Rios, and I'm joined by Mario. How's it going, man?
Hey man, I was just on the Academy website looking for kayaks because it's been raining every day, and today was probably the worst of it. There
Oh,
was flooding, and also we had the crazy lady on 45 sitting in the traffic with a gun.
it has been a
So,
wild weekend, man. Yeah, you got the lady who hold the trailer for the last 6 hours.
yes,
I work in the country, and I had to run some errands in Wharton, and it was just torrential downpour. I drive back to East Bernard where I work at, and bright and sunny, and then it gets real dark and clear. Like, man, come on, you got to be kidding me! It's like the rain comes. No, but we've this has been a pretty exciting NBA playoffs.
yes,
As basketball fans, can appreciate just the unexpectedness and not having the same team over and over winning it. And I gotta say, I
yes.
enjoy the parity we've seen in the last few years with the NBA Finals. It hasn't been the Lakers and Celtics every other year. And this year we had two small teams. Well, one team you kind of expected to make it. The other one was more of a Cinderella story with the Indiana Pacers, especially with the way their
Yeah.
season started, barely over 500. They were really struggling, and something just clicked, and they were able to turn it on and just go on this insane run. You got Haliburton having one of the best postseasons I've seen in my lifetime in quite some time, with all those buzzer
Mhm.
beaters. What have been your thoughts on this NBA postseason so far?
The team, I guess, from the West, you knew who was going to make it. You know who was the best team. OKC was just head and shoulders above everybody. You can see it from the start of the season, and they were just dominating. Oh, even the play tournament, the
You
in
playing?
season tournament. They
Oh,
ended up winning that. But you just knew they were going to make it. They were just that good. Indiana, again, like you were just saying earlier, they were just a surprise team. But they had a lot of grit, a lot of fight, and whenever January came around, that's when it really started to like just click for them, like you're saying. And next thing they're making this crazy run to the finals that no one expected. They beat some big teams. Some
yeah.
overmatched teams. They were overmatched. They were the underdog in every single series. So it was crazy to see. It was like I was excited that, like you were saying, that two teams that normally that haven't made it in a while, made it, and the style of basketball made it more exciting too.
Oh yeah, it was definitely very fast paced, and because it was a back and forth series throughout the entire the first 6 games. Like if you look at the points scored, they were almost evenly matched. There wasn't really a ton of blowouts.
Hmm.
There was the game 6 blowout where basically even the point totals for both teams. But other than that, before that there wasn't a ton of like one sided games. It was the Pacers were in it, even in losses. They were still within striking distance. And then game 7, I'll be honest, it was a little anticlimactic when Haliburton went down because he had 9 points
Oh
in minutes. And then when I saw him go down with no contact, I was like, it's either an ACL or an Achilles. And unfortunately, it was
yeah,
worst case scenario, his Achilles. And it really bothers me when they showed in slow motion, like, oh, here's the most painful injury in the world. Let's watch it again. Let's watch his calf, pop. Like, man, stop doing
yeah. It
it.
was terrible
Like,
to watch.
I felt bad for the guy. Like it's game 7 NBA Finals for that to happen in the first quarter. It's like that's heartbreaking.
And you never know when they'll make it back to the finals again, and that's the heartbreak of it. Even you have a team that's making a spectacular run, and they haven't made it since the Reggie Miller days. Really been.
25 years.
Yeah. So um, the city was excited. A lot of the fans were excited, but it's just to see it and watch it. Halliburton crying, saying no, no, no. Not right now.
Yeah, you could feel
You
for
really
him.
feel for yeah, you feel for him, you feel for the team, and it just took, the wind out of the whole building for at least for Indiana. They had no idea, they didn't know how to function after. I mean, they were putting a fight, don't get me wrong. They put up a fight,
They stayed in, but
but
that third quarter, it was
it seemed like it was a matter of time that, hey, they were gonna OKC was gonna, do something to
Just put it
extend the
away.
lead the way they did. And so it pretty much happened in the third quarter. They just overwhelmed them, and then from there it was just they just didn't. They weren't just clicking. They just didn't. They were just lost. You can see it was just a lot. Haliburton was holding that team together, and he made that team go the way that he went. This is the way the team went. So it's just heartbreaking to see that happen in the finals, especially Game 7, when it comes down to the last game. So it sucks.
Yeah, but I mean, other than that, it's been a great postseason. But yeah, that Game 7 was excellent. But hats
Yeah.
off to them there. They've shown that how to rebuild teams the right way. It's taken a long time. Because
Yes.
they went from having, Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook in their primes, and having to lose, piece by piece because they couldn't afford to pay them, and then just stockpiling these first-round picks and developing their players and making the right trades. That Paul George trade has to go down as probably the worst trade of all sports.
Yeah.
SGA. The Clippers gave up SGA, a gangload of picks for the podcaster Paul George. That's he cares more about podcasting than playing basketball at this point.
Playoff P.
Playoff pandemic. I'm like, it's just mind-boggling how they fleeced the Clippers. And at the time, people are like, "Oh, that people thought that the Thunder won that trade." You're pairing, Westbrook with Paul George, but Paul George, as talented as he has never been fully passionate about being a professional basketball player. It's just, to him, it's just a job. He doesn't have that passion. That's fine, but to give up all that, man.
I mean, like you're saying, congrats on OKC. Sam Presti, who's been there forever, GM. You knew he was on to something the way he was drafting. Of
And
course, we had the big three.
First rounders left. It's a scary.
Yeah, and he just kept hoarding first round picks. Like every time he would get a trade, they would do a trade with someone. He would make sure he would get a first round pick somewhere somehow.
Several at least.
So, and they were just hoarding them and hoarding them and hoarding them. And finally, when the time came, they ended up getting, making a big trade. Got SGA. Didn't really know what he was going to be. You knew he had something in him, but he turned out to be exactly who Sam Presti thought he was going to be. And so now he's this all-star. He broke out MVP, Finals MVP, and he led that team. He was doing things like, I watched a lot of people play basketball, and he just does it so nonchalantly. He just walks in. It's just like he's just walking there, but it's just so easy for him to play basketball and to score. Yeah, and I see it. I'm just like, wow, like what is going on? The other team's struggling defense-wise, and he just, it's so effortless for him, and it was crazy. It was awesome to see it in the finals like that. Just like, man, this guy's just 40 points, 30 points here, 27. Just like Rick Carlisle say, oh, that's automatic 30 points. I factor into every game. That's crazy to even say that as a coach.
No, I mean, this move, like for them trading for SGA, is pretty reminiscent of when the Rockets traded for James Harden. It just turned their franchise around, turned them from middle of the pack to big contenders. Unfortunately, they never made the NBA Finals because they had the unfortunate luck of running to the Warriors dynasty year after year after year. But it's pretty reminiscent, and their styles are very similar. The only thing I like about his game is the foul baiting. Very reminiscent of James Harden.
Of course. Yes.
That's my one knock against SGA. I can't stand that. Like, he's too good I enjoy his game. He is too good of a player to do that. But I guess it's today's NBA, but I really don't like that aspect of his game, the foul baiting. Because you're too good for that, man. You don't do all that.
Yeah, I mean, and you seen, there was a little change. Each round of the, different teams that were playing, you can tell the physicality was there. But for some reason, when it came to the OKC, and in the finals, it was during the other playoff game. So it was just a little disappointing that they were doing it. But, just like James Harden was gaming the system, he knew what he was doing, leaning in, doing this and that. It's the same thing, swinging the hands out, it's like soccer, it's you're flopping, you're gonna get the call more, more times than not. So it's the equivalent of a soccer flop. It's basketball, but it's hard to really rein it in, because it's all dependent on the discretion of the ref. So it's really hard to like kind of rein those kind of things in. I mean, they can try to, but again, it's tough, and this is going to keep happening. But I do like that. The final. I mean, just the finals and playoffs in general are more physical. Something I was more accustomed growing up to, like
Right.
watching that kind of physicality. And you're like, man, these guys are playing tough, playing hard. So that's what you want to see. You want to see the players giving it all. So that's kind of what I liked about the playoffs as a whole, is that there was more, than the boys play instead of
Yeah,
a lot of
like,
work. Hopefully
you can
going
play
forward.
because in the regular season also just let them play a little bit more physical, and then ramp
Yeah.
it up even more in the playoffs. Which growing up in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, that's what you're accustomed to. Physical
Yep.
play year round, and then in the playoffs, it was not necessarily a
Oh,
bloodbath,
yeah.
but it was that separated the men from the boys. And this postseason, it brought back some nostalgia of much more physical play, and
Yes.
I'm all for it. If they can do this throughout the regular season, I think that'll help increase the ratings because no one wants to see 3-point, a 3-point shootout night in, night out. Like, come on, guys.
I mean, and then also teams don't want, fans don't want to be there, it's a 48-minute game, but you're there. Just the last 2 minutes is like another 30 minutes added on with the timeouts and
Yeah,
fouls. So,
they got to figure out
it's
something
just,
to speed that up
if you can speed up the pace of play, I think fans will like it more because, hey, I'm here, and this is always exciting, nobody wants to sit there, last 30, even the minutes, like, here we go. We're going to play the foul game. So you're just sitting there. And then the commercials, too, don't help either. They want to go to NBA has to make, squeeze in those extra commercials to get some more money. But, they just, but again, anyways, it was still good. Talk about that all the time, but it was still great. Hopefully, it's a sign for things to come next season that they, let them play a little bit more. I did see a lot of hand checking, which is pretty cool. That you don't see them more. So I think it was good. Like I said, it got me more invested than I would have normally been in the past seasons.
Oh no, most definitely. Like last few years, I would tune in here and then, but I wasn't like fully invested like I was in this. But like this postseason, I watched every round, not
Yeah.
every game, but every round. I watched several games because again, the
Mhm.
parity and just the level of play. I really wish they would do away with the play-in. Like it should be the
Yes.
top 8 teams. Like just let's leave it at that. Like I get you have the wild card here and there that makes it like the Miami Heat a few years back, but for the most part, let's do away with the play-in. Top 8 teams make it because the East is already weak as it is. Like we don't need to see an additional bottom tier teams battling it out for the play.
It was pretty bad.
Let's keep no, but so it's changing course. So there was a small little trade that happened recently. You guys may or may not have heard about it. A certain 7-footer from UT that got traded to the Houston Rockets. So help me out here. Who was it that got traded here to Houston?
I think something about kind of like rhymes with tarantula. The Durantula, Kevin Durant. It's
That's
Cage.
about right. I mean, we had been saying for weeks that that Kevin Durant was going to determine how the rest of free agency
Yeah.
plays out for the rest of the league because he was going to be the easiest domino to move, but he's also the
Yes.
one that can really put a team over the top that's on the cusp of being contenders. So for the Rockets, before this trade, not even top 10 best odds to make the NBA Finals next year. After that trade, they, according to the Vegas, books, they are number 2 behind the Thunder. And it's not super
Crazy.
far as the odds of them actually being the champions versus the Thunder. That's how much of an impact Kevin Durant makes. People will argue, oh, well, he's 37, he's not what he used to be. Keep in mind, let's put this in perspective. At 36 last season, being the second option behind Devin Booker, still averaged 26 points a game.
Yep.
underrated defender, and he's a 7-footer that can, shoot from the logo. They don't have a ton of those guys in the league that can do it at his
No.
level. He's a 50, 90, 40 guy. He can hit 50% from the field, 90 from free throws, and 40 from three. Like there aren't a lot of guys that can do that at 7 feet tall.
No, there's not.
Quite his advanced
No.
stage. Like he brings to Houston what they were lacking last season. What we have talked about, during the playoffs. Who is going to be your closer? As we saw, Jalen Green was not that guy. They had given him every opportunity to prove he is that guy. He was not, unfortunately. And that's why I had mentioned, on previous shows and on other podcasts that if Jalen Green has a bad playoffs, he's going to be traded because his contract makes it easy for him to move, and he's been given ample time and multiple opportunities to prove that, hey, you know what, this is my team. Like I'm going to be the closer. I'm the alpha on this team. But yes, when the lights were bright, he even said it himself. The lights were a little too bright for him, and I wish him well, but he just didn't work out here in Houston. What are your thoughts on the trade?
I mean, I think it was a good trade, especially for what they traded to get KD, which makes it even like almost like they got fleeced, like the Suns got fleeced. So, Jalen Green just did not show up. He was just not who the Rockets thought they were, or who the fans thought he could be.
Yeah.
So, throughout the season, you've seen him, kind of like he's picking up, he's scoring more, he's doing more. And so you would think that would carry into the playoffs. Unfortunately, it just did not. Golden State held him in check. He would disappear a lot. Maybe he had one game that was 27 points. He did pretty well, but besides that, it just was not working out. He would get the ball, immediately pass it away. The confidence was just not there. And I've seen videos of him already doing off-season workouts, trying to get stronger, build some more muscle. But unfortunately, he's been with the Rockets for 3 years, just not 4. Just
5.
I was scouring the internet, after the trade, a lot of pro Rockets, websites and stuff. And there were still some fans that were still holding out hope that, hey, Jalen Green, he can do it. It's like by the 3rd year, usually a player of his caliber should already be showing massive improvement. And which he did, it's just not.
It was inconsistent.
Yeah, big time. So the Rockets, they made the trade. They made the trade at the right time. Seeing Dylan Brooks leave, I think it, hurts the Rockets a little bit. I know it hurts the fans a lot because of what
Did you freeze?
He was a little slow, just a little slow, and sometimes put some himself in awful positions with fouls during the playoffs. But he did score. He did a lot for the team. So I'm not going to say that he wasn't a great, good player when he was here because he was with the Rockets. But I see a lot of fans were a little sad that he was leaving. But again, for what they traded for Kevin Durant, it's still like, wow, like, they didn't give up, Jabari Smith, who the Phoenix Suns were really trying to go for. But, Rafael Stone, hey, hats off, man. What a trade. What a trade.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's been cooking as a general manager. He's, been very masterful as far as his moves that he's made. They've been very underrated, in my opinion. And from the reports I've been seeing, the Phoenix, they really wanted, they wanted more young players. They wanted Jabari. They wanted either Cam Whitmore or Reed Shepherd. And the Rockets weren't willing to, trade a lot of their young core. They wanted to hold on to them and try to develop them and see what they can be. Because Jabari has, he's had his injury problems, but he showed in the postseason that he can help stretch the floor as a power forward, and also underrated on the defensive end. It's just he needs to develop more confidence in his jumper and be given a little bit more opportunities. And I think now without Jalen Green and without Dylan Brooks, it's going to give some of these younger guys more chances to prove themselves, like a Cam Whitmore. Now is his chance to show, hey, you know what, I
Yes.
deserve more
Yes.
minutes. Because you could see him on the bench and he looked, a little checked out. It's just interesting because he's not getting any playing time. Now that there isn't a logjam at shooting guard, he has a real chance to show that, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
There's a reason I was, touted as a top 5 pick before, my injury concerns, during the draft. Same thing with Reed Shepherd. Now is his chance to show, hey, I'm the point guard of the future.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting to see the way this second squad is going to look coming off the bench next season. So, this is going to be for the Rockets. It's going to be a deep bench. If they perform the way they're supposed to, it's going to be, it's going to be, it's going to put a lot of teams in check, on alert, because the Rockets last year were pretty much almost equivalent to like OKC, just like a OKC light. Whenever they played in this regular season, they were always like right there. And so at the end, the Rockets did end up, winning like a couple of the last season games against them. But, that's what just with the player adding Durant, that really takes them to like, okay, now they're on the same level, or they should be, at least on paper, should be on the same level as OKC going into next season, especially with the bench. And if, now you got Eason's really going to get a lot of playing time, especially, that Dylan Brooks is gone. Amen Thompson is really going to, fill in that position. So you're going to see a lot of young players and, players at the end of the time. You're saying Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd, especially, Van Vliet's back, but he's still getting someone to back him up. So, and Reed Shepherd's already been reported that he's going to be having a lot of playing time in the summer league because they're when him getting ready for the next season. So the Rockets are already taking the next steps, thinking about next season and how they can improve and who they need to look at to make the improvements so they can be ready for next season.
Yeah, I mean, lineup wise, they have a lot of possibilities they can go to. So just one possibility as far as starting 5. You got little Mike Evans at point. I think they probably slot A-Man into the 2 spot because Durant's going to play the 3. They already said that Durant's going to play the 3. Yeah. So the 4 is going to come down to either Jabari or Tari. Me personally, I will go with Jabari and have Tari be that the super sub, your 6 man, and then you have Sengun at the 5. Or you can switch it up and go, especially what worked in the playoffs, double big lineup.
Yes, double big. Yep.
Steven Adams and Sengun. And then having Kevin Durant, you have 3 7-footers on the floor at the same time.
Insane.
They have a lot of possibilities for different lineups for the starters and for the second unit as well. They have a lot of versatility now. And then now that in close games, who's your go-to guy. Kevin Durant can still create separation. He can shoot from the logo and beyond. Like he is the guy that can really open up this offense for this team because you have to space the floor, Kevin Durant, because he can light it up from anywhere. You can't jam the paint because Kevin Durant's, going to basically make you pay if you, try to, double him because he's also his court vision is underrated as well. He doesn't get a lot of props for being a playmaker, but he has shown in his later years that he's a pretty good facilitator, especially for a 7-footer. And with Sengun, who's also a good facilitator at 7 foot. Like I think that should help elevate his game as well. Having a presence like Kevin Durant is going to draw at least 2 defenders away. It's going to give Sengun a lot of one-on-one opportunities.
Also the main reasons that I did like the Durant trade is Durant is all about balling. Like you don't really hear him about doing anything else in the offseason but going to the gym and working out.
Great.
Yeah, he's on Twitter with his fake accounts, making comments, but he's about ball and him being as great as he is and the Rockets having the young core that they have now, if they can see that, they say, man, this is Kevin Durant, he's champions, he's one of the greatest, one top 5 players right now. Even with his age, he's still, great. One
of the greatest scorers in the league.
So just for him to be in the building and the young players to see how he approaches the game, how he takes practice, how often he's working on his game. I would hope that it was some of that will rub off on some of the younger talent, and
Yeah,
they can go with it, and they can really elevate themselves and the team, and hopefully to a championship or finals appearance. That way, it shows like, hey, this it shows the big difference that Durant makes, versus all the bad stuff that you hear. He doesn't get along with players. If he
yeah.
can really show this team progress, he can be one of the main catalysts, and he can kind of shed a lot of that negativity that he doesn't mesh with players, or he doesn't do this
He
and
can't get
that.
it done
So
anymore. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a
he's
lot
not a
of
real leader. He just because he's not a real vocal person, but he can be a silent leader by showing the players,
lead by
hey,
example.
this is how you do it. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of another thing I was excited about, seeing the Rockets get Kevin Durant.
Not just that. So money wise, there's reports that
Oh
he's
yeah,
going to take less money because he wants to retire in Houston. He wants to retire a Rocket. So they're going to extend them and give him, he's going to take a smaller deal. Little Mike Evans, Van Fleet, he took a smaller deal as well because he was scheduled to make $44 million over one season. He got extended, so it's going to be 2 years for $50 million. So basically $25 million a year. It frees up more space. So they still have the mid-level exception and, plenty of, cap space. I don't think they're done adding additional pieces. They can either make a couple small signings for depth, or they can make a big splash. They have, that kind of ammunition if they want to go that route. So I'm really curious, especially now that the draft is over. I'm really curious to see which route they take. I mean, you can't go wrong with either route, honestly. Swinging for the fence,
yeah.
or adding some more depth, just because Durant's probably going to got 2, maybe 3 years left in him. So the window
Mhm.
is not small, but you kind of have an idea what the time frame is while you have Kevin Durant. Because you make a move like this because you feel like you're on the brink of, taking that
Yes,
next, like the Thunder did. The Thunder, they outside of SGA, there's been a lot of smaller moves and drafting well, and it's paid off for them. But the difference between the Rockets and the Thunder is the Thunder have had to trade multiple superstars over the last decade to accumulate all those first round picks. The
that's
Rockets
true.
don't have that luxury. Outside of James Harden, that's where most of these ammunition for all these moves they made has come from. They haven't had multiple future Hall of Famers on the roster,
No,
and they've had to make do and do it their own way. But as they've shown, it's worked in their own way. Now it's just on them and this front office to take the next step and see if they can make it to the Western Conference Finals, make it to
I
the
think
NBA Finals.
one of the things that, just like you were bringing up, is the team friendly deals that Durant, Van Vliet's taken. Steven Adams. These are it shows that they want to be with the Rockets, and they believe what the Rockets are doing now and in the future, and they feel that with the team now, I think those veterans, like, what they seen what the Rockets did last season
Yeah,
when they were there, like, hey, they were playing great ball. They know it's like they're just missing one piece, and they added the piece, Durant, and that's why they want to be here, because be with the Rockets is because they see
the culture.
that, hey, yeah, and also, they just signed Ime Udoka to a long-term extension, so the Rockets are serious, about making a big push to go to win a championship, and you just don't see that with a lot of teams. And again, it's been tough for the Rockets because when Maury was here, he was just trading everything. Hey, just
Right?
to try to re-up, reload, and it really hindered the team from being able to build in the future. So it took a while, but Raphael Stone, with all his wisdoms, like, hey, we're gonna hold the fort down. We're gonna hold, we just got to stay pat, and we're gonna go through some tough times, but we'll come at
Really,
the end. We'll come out of the tunnel much better than we were before, and now it's paying off dividends. The way they're rebuilding.
yeah, like I said, every team has taken a different approach as far as the rebuilds go. We've seen it over the last, last decade plus with the 76ers and their rebuild process. their process didn't work, unfortunately for them. They're having to
Mm,
restart again, and they're going to have to make a tough
yeah.
decision what they want to do with Joel Embiid. Because I think if I'm, but they have Daryl Morey, so I don't think they'll trade Embiid. But I think a team like that, for example, that's gone through multiple rebuilds, like you want to rebuild around your young superstar Maxi versus trying to build around Joel Embiid. Because I mean
Those
the tide's
knees,
turning.
those knees are breaking down.
Yeah, like he is
Those
not who he
knees.
was, and we saw he missed a good chunk of the year, and you just really can't depend on him to stay healthy as he gets older. Same thing with the Thunder. They've had to go through a few rebuilds, but they are like looking like they might be the next, dynasty. The way things are shaping up with the talent they have and all the draft capital they have over the next 5-6 seasons, it's insane. San Antonio, like, much as it pains me to say this, they built something
Yeah.
special there too. Like, I mean, they had to be one of the luckiest teams ever next to the Mavericks. Like, how do you go from drafting Wembanyama, Stephen Castle, and then you get Dylan Harper 3 consecutive years? Like, come on. And you have CP3, one of the greatest point guards in league history there to mentor these young guys. And you still have Popovich in the building. He's not the head coach anymore, but he has his ear to the ground, and he's giving some input. And then the Mavericks, who went from trading a future face of the league in Luka, and getting another possible franchise player in Cooper Flag. I'm like, come on. So,
The state of Texas is building up for a war next year.
it is. It really is. Like
It's going to be crazy to see, who literally emerges from the state of Texas, just because the teams are that stacked. Kyrie, Klay Thompson, you still got
and Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis. It's like, what? So you're like, wow, like
it's a good mixture of youth and veterans on all 3 teams, honestly.
yes.
Not so much with the Spurs as far as like the veterans, because Chris Paul, I mean, he's on his last leg. But I mean, the Mavericks, you got Anthony Davis, you got Kyrie, like these are guys that are, NBA champions, future Hall of Famers, top 75 players of all time. With the Rockets, you got, emerging superstar in Amen Thompson. You have Kevin Durant,
Yes.
first ballot Hall of Famer. You have Fred VanVleet, one of the greatest undrafted players ever in league history. I mean, this guy went from being undrafted to being a key piece on a championship winning team, and on the cusp of possibly winning a second one with a second team. Like there's going to be some exciting storylines for next season in the NBA for sure.
I mean, don't quote me now, but the West is back. This is what I'm used to seeing out of the Western Conference. The East has always been,
Yeah.
You had a couple teams.
It's been the haves and the have.
Yeah, but the West has always been.
It's been a
Kind
juggernaut.
of reminds me of it kind of reminds me of the SEC, right? They just beating each other up the whole season.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't make the championship or they'll win the championship. Why? Because they're too busy beating each other up during the season. So
there was at one point, basically between seeds 2 through 8, it was like maybe less than 3 games difference. It was that close for a good chunk of the season. The Thunder were heads and shoulders above everybody else, but like seeds 2 through almost like 9 or 10, like they were very, very close. As the season progressed, we started to see a little bit of separation from seed 6 through 10, but still, I mean, it wasn't an insurmountable, games ahead where no one could, make a push and catapult themselves into the top seeds. But it's going to be even more interesting in the West next season because again, the Mavericks have really re-upped. The Spurs have re-upped. They're probably going to be, fighting for 6, 7 seeds. The Rockets, they should be top 3 or 4 team in the West, if not top 2. I think the Thunder are still the class of the West until they prove otherwise. Like they have the talent, they have the depth, they're set with draft picks if they want to make a move at the trade deadline. It's just it reminds me of the Spurs of the early 2000s. You get all these great players, and you still have draft capital.
Oh yeah,
get even more.
It's just I guess the big thing, even though Giannis kind of said he still wants to stay, but there's still trade talk about Giannis. So what if he moves? We don't, I mean, of course he said he wants to stay in the East, looking more of the New York area.
Yeah.
But still, that's there's still a lot of trades to be made this offseason. What's his name? Memphis, they moved their guy. I
Oh,
forgot what
Bane,
his name.
Desmond Bane.
Yeah, so these teams are trying to, the teams that you normally would see, making the push, playoff push, or just being, you know, one of those teams talked about in the playoffs. They're also making moves. Utah just made some good. When the draft, the teams in the draft made some pretty good moves. So that's kind of
I'm,
why,
I'm kind of
I think
curious
the
to see
West
how
is kind of coming back.
I'm kind of curious to see how Ace Bailey works out in Utah because you can kind of see, by his body language and his facial expression, he does not want to go with this. I'm really curious about the thought process with Ace Bailey's camp. Like, you are not the top consensus player in this draft, but you're making these demands and saying, I'm not going to work out for this team. I'm not going to work out for this team. This is where I want to go. Like, my brother in Christ, you weren't that great in college to make these lists of demands. You're not even the best player in this draft. Like, you weren't even the best player on your team. Like, the best player on the
It,
team was Dylan Harper. Like, what are you doing? Like, he had some bad, advice in his camp because this is not the way to go about things. The NBA draft process is a job interview, and
yes, yeah.
I'm kind of surprised I'm surprised Utah picked him at 5 because I honestly expected him to drop to like lower lottery, like 9 or 10. Honestly,
Yeah, it's one of those picks that I don't think maybe it's just to take the best person off, the best player on the board, and probably he was the best player on the board at the time. Oh,
oh,
he
yeah,
should, yeah.
don't
But
get me wrong, he's a great player, but
but
not as good as
you
we
know,
think he is. Like,
I think the person who put the worst impression for their team was Collins Murray Boyles. Whenever the Toronto drafted him, I mean, he dropped an F bomb, shaking his head, and just like what? So,
look,
but it
I
seems
think
like it
Toronto's
wasn't
cool,
just
man, but Toronto's a good team, man. Like, come
it
on.
just this class, some players were just not having it with, I guess they wanted to go to certain teams. And again, they got bad advice. And you know what's funny? I was watching this Shaq thing on Netflix that he's with Reebok. Did you take a look at that?
I did.
Did you see whenever they were trying to sign Ace Bailey?
Mm-hmm.
He was just kept ghosting them and ghosting them. And so that kind of gave me, like
Kind of
now
gives
with
you a
seeing
little insight into his personality. Like,
exactly. So and now seeing what he did with the NBA draft is like now he's kind of coming together, kind of what kind of person he was. And it's funny because I was thinking, like, you know what? I think Shaq and Reebok dodged the bullet by not signing him because look
yeah,
at the way he is now. So, but it was just funny. It like whenever I heard his name, it just reminded me of watching that Reebok show special, with Netflix and Shaq, and seeing the process of how signing players and
like
how
the
Ace Bailey was just kind of conducting himself. So
I mean, the absolute bare minimum, just as a professional courtesy, is just go and hear what they got to say. Do your due diligence. But I think that's
yes,
a little bit more to like the generational differences between like our generation, for example, and these guys who were, Gen Zers. Like, think about it. Think about like 10 years ago. Guys were just grateful to be drafted. Doesn't matter what team it was. They were just happy to, gain generational wealth and be in the association. Now, these guys they're entitled. They feel they deserve
yeah.
this and that without, with playing one season in college. Like, you don't deserve anything. You are lucky to be where you're at right now. Like, you be grateful. Like, you haven't earned anything yet. Like, be grateful that you have a chance at generational wealth and play in the greatest basketball association in the world. Like, let's show a little gratitude.
Yeah, it's just crazy to see how he felt. But one person that kind of surprised me when they went is Con Knuppel. I was surprised he went at 4, but also not surprised as well because watching him with Duke, what he would did in the throughout the playoffs. He was great. He did a lot of stuff. And he was a big dog, just fighting it out, getting those rebounds, get knocked down 3 shooters. But I was a little surprised that, Charlotte picked them, but, good for him, having that, for Charlotte noticing what kind of player he is and, the ceiling that he has, he can really hit a high ceiling. So
Old school.
that was one of the surprise draft picks that I seen that I didn't see what he would be at number 4.
Yeah, that one in the Phillies pick too, because even with all the red flags, I still had a feeling just because it's Philly, they would go with Ace Bailey, but they might have dodged a bullet. Utah, and it's gonna be maybe being in a place where there is literally nothing to do but play basketball. Maybe this could be a blessing in disguise for him. Get him to really focus on what's important, which is basketball. Get his head right, and you know what? Just focus on being a basketball player. Because the places he said he wanted to go to was, places where more of a nightlife scene than Utah. Because like Vernon Maxwell says, who wants to live in Utah?
I heard they. I was watching Pat McAfee today, and they had the owner, Utah Jazz owner, on, and he talked about the pick, and he's like, hey, one of the things I remember him saying is like, hey, one of my jobs is for him to like Utah, like not the basketball team, but the city.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of work to do because he knows that the reports were out there that H. Bailey did not want to go to Utah. So he, that's why he said on Pat McAfee today is like, hey, it's my job, as the owner, and to blend with these, to let these players know that hey, Utah is a place to come play, and it's just not what you think it is. And then he turned his camera around and then he showed like this is your view, and there's nothing but mountains. It looks nice, but
it's a beautiful place to visit. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but it is, we know
he's a kid that was living in New York City for a while. Like, I mean, I get it's going to be a bit of a culture shock, but at the same time, like, your job is to be a basketball player. It doesn't matter what city you're living in, what the state of the team is. It is your job as a basketball player, as a lottery pick, to turn that franchise around. Like, look at LeBron going getting drafted by Cleveland. Cleveland's not the most glamorous city out there, but he went there, no complaints. Helped turn the team around. They made it to the finals. They didn't win. He left, came back, and brought them a championship. But that was back when LeBron was a little bit likable. This season, like just a couple days ago, and they asked him, about Cooper Flag. He has the luck of playing with some great players. I'm like, bro, like, how do you make it about yourself? Like, it's like he never has enough help. Doesn't matter who he's playing with. Could be playing with the '92 All-Star team. The dream. I didn't have enough
help. LeBron's been making a lot of questionable comments this offseason with his talk show with Stephen Nash. He's making some questionable things. He's like, oh, I'm not a ring chaser, but you went to Miami to win a ring.
Not one, not two, not three, not four.
So, it's just funny that he's making a lot of these comments that he's making, but the comments he's made in the past don't align with what he's saying now. It's just like what they contradicting everything he's saying. So it's like what's really happening. So it's been an interesting offseason with LeBron talking more, and a lot of contradictions of what he's saying. So it's been very interesting to see what's been happening with LeBron and how he's kind of opening up more. Now that he knows this may be his last season. We don't know, but
we'll see. I think with him, he wants to play with Bryce, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna be
because Bryce is 16. You got to wait another 2 years.
Yeah, too old for that. He's gonna break down before he can fix it.
No, but circling back to the Rockets, I think with that acquisition of Kevin Durant makes them one of the favorites in the West, along with the Thunder. It's going to be real interesting to see those teams, how they match up, because they match on paper, they match up pretty well now. You got great bigs in Chet and Sengun. Sengun has gotten the better of the matchups against Chet. I think with both these teams, a lot of it's going to boil down to health. For the Thunder, the health of Chet Holmgren. For the Rockets, the health of Durant. Because if Kevin Durant can stay healthy, this is going to be one of the toughest teams to beat in the league. If he misses an extended period of time, that's when you really want to focus on the depth of this roster. So earlier in the episode I mentioned, they can go either swing for the fences and go for another superstar signing or build a more solid bench. I would lean towards the latter, focus on the depth in case there is a Kevin Durant injury. Because again, he's 37. He hasn't played a full 82 in several years. So just, a little bit of an insurance policy.
I have this idea that I feel Ime is somehow in the beginning of this next coming up season is going to start tinkering with the lineup to, prepare in case Durant goes down.
Yeah.
So, she's really going to insert Cam, really start messing and then not have Durant play as much because the lineup is so stacked with young players. And we've seen how, the Rockets were playing this past season with their young stars. So I feel that Ime is going to kind of, limit Durant a little bit in his minutes to, that may prepare maybe for the inevitable injury. Hopefully not. But, that way, that's kind of their insurance policy. If they don't make another move in the offseason, that's the way I kind of feel he will do it. But I'm not sure. But I feel it would be a good, let's say, blueprint for the Rockets to take next season if they kind of use the beginning of the season to, kind of build up, tinker with the lineup, get Cam and other players who don't, the bench more minutes. That way they're ready whenever, they come up against, matchup like OKC later down the season. So that way they're better matched up and they, the lights aren't too bright for them, as someone once said.
Right. No, it's going to be very curious to see which route they take at the rest of free agency. And, the lineup's going to see, game one and all the way to the All-Star break. Because, you could, with this much youth on the roster, you can also use some of these guys as trade pieces if you want to make a big splash before, right before the trade deadline in February. It's going to be a very interesting season. And, as a basketball fan, I'm looking forward to it because there's going to be a lot of great storylines for next season. And,
yes,
it's gonna be a wild ride because the East is wide open because Boston is since they hit the second apron, they're gonna have to tear their roster apart, and you're not gonna have Tatum the entire year basically.
And Haliburton's out too.
We're gonna have Haliburton all year. It's the East is very, very, very wide open. The West is gonna be a dogfight like it always is. So it's as a basketball fan, it's gonna be a lot to look forward to.
I'm excited. I'm excited finally to see the NBA kind of get back to a little bit, not fully, but a little back to the roots.
Well, it's going back to NBC, and you got Michael Jordan guest commentary.
That's going to be crazy. That's going to be crazy. I hope he doesn't do a Tom Brady and look like a robot when he's standing there and just yes, hello. But I think Mike's just going to tell it how it is. Hey, this guy sucks, or. But it, like I said, it's be interesting to see his takes. No one's ever really heard his takes. Really, he just kind of just comments here and there. But these are gonna be full blown takes by Michael Jordan. It just you never hear this.
Well, you get to take a small peek inside the mind of the GOAT. Just hear his perspective of what how he views the current NBA product, his thoughts on certain players and certain narratives and this and that. I'm really curious to see, him as an analyst and see what his thoughts are on a lot of, of today's NBA. Because like you said, he doesn't really talk too much outside of, just complimenting his peers, even, watching him be interviewed as a kid, he never called himself the GOAT. never call himself the greatest. He would always
Mm-mm.
praise the previous generation, like, these guys paved the way for me. And his main thing was his team winning. He didn't care about individual accolades. His concern was winning rings.
Yeah. It's and also another thing, now with NBC coming back, I hope we see the storylines that they used to have.
Oh,
The real storylines, the little videos, packages, like, hey, yeah, I hope they come back with that, because it's something that definitely missing. There's a lot of storylines for next season, a lot. And so I want them to be able to highlight those stories the way they used to highlight back in the 90s when, NBA on
yeah,
NBC.
Bob Costas, narrating, this different storylines,
Yes.
finals, like it really set the tone. I'm like, man, I missed that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But yeah, guys, that's gonna do it for us this season. This is our season finale. We will be back probably right around the end of summer league, right when training camp starts. By then, we'll have a better idea what the roster is going to look like for the Rockets and the rest of the league, and we'll see if they make any big moves. As always, I'm your host Rios. Make sure you follow us on In the Paint on YouTube as well as on Twitter. And Mario, any final thoughts?
Just excited for next season. Eager to see if there's any more moves from the Rockets this offseason. Ready to see how the summer league's going to look like, especially with the Reed Shepherd getting significant time. See kind of what the Rockets do, what he does. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be excited for going into next season. So just because it's the off season doesn't mean it's the off season. There's still things going on.
There's never an off
season. Yeah. So it's exciting. It's going to be exciting to see what the Rockets are looking like going into training camp.
Yeah, but we'll be back, season 2, giving you more updates on the Houston Rockets as well as the Houston Cougars men's basketball team, because they've also made a lot of big moves, which we will talk about when we, return in season 2. Y'all be safe and take care of each other. Later.